Dan Dickau here for the Bulldog Broadcast on the Field of 68 Media Network. It's been an awesome regular season for Gonzaga. The Bulldogs obviously sitting at 13-1 in WCC play. Weren't quite able to complete that undefeated conference regular season. But nonetheless, 13-1. I think if you were to ask the average fan or even the avid Gonzaga fan going into this season, would you take a 3-loss regular season and a 13-1 conference record, as well as a number 1 ranking, a number 1 Ken Palm ranking, a number 1 net ranking going into the WCC tournament? Would you take it? 100%. I would imagine that people would take it. The crazy thing is because this Gonzaga program has gotten so good over the last few years, you lose to a really good St. Mary's team on the road who's ranked 23 in that game. They're now top 20 in Ken Palm as well as net rankings, as well as in the AP and ESPN USA Today polls. You lose that game, all of a sudden there are some people doubting Gonzaga. National media, of course, national fans, of course, critics, fans of some of the Power 5 schools, yes, they are doubting it. But unfortunately, and oddly enough, I've heard a few people make comments to me over the last few days is, here we go again. We can't play against this team. We can't play against that type of team. Well, if you take another step back and look at the 3 losses this season in the regular season that Gonzaga has had, Duke, Alabama, St. Mary's, they got outplayed by 3 really good basketball teams. You know, first off, you start off with Duke. Duke's the ACC conference champions. They are going to go into the ACC tournament as a 1 seed. If they win that, there is a outside chance. There's a chance that they're a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think as of now, most bracketologists have them as a 2 seed. But Duke's a really good basketball team. You're talking about going back to that game in November when you look at it. Drew Timme really struggled. Chet Holmgren wasn't himself just yet. And I say himself meaning what he's looked like and how he's played over the last 5-6 weeks, which has been absolutely impressive, something that would make you consider him to be a first-team All-American as a freshman. But Timme struggled. You didn't have the consistent production yet off the bench of Hunter Salas, Nolan Hickman. Anton Watson was still finding his way. But Duke played really well that game. I think Paolo Banchero had 20 points, if I remember correctly, in that first half. He was dominant in that first half. And then Mark Williams on the interior really took the physical fight to Gonzaga's interior, and in particular Drew Timme that day. Now, if you were an All-American like a Drew Timme should be, are you allowed an occasional off night? Of course you are. And you would hope that that comes on rare occasions. And for Drew Timme, it has come on rare occasions. It came against Duke because of how they played him, and it came against St. Mary's because of how they played him. So I don't think that there's anything too worried about. But now let's take a look at that Alabama loss that they had in Seattle in December. Gonzaga was coming off a stretch of really difficult stretch of good teams, good games, where they played UCLA, they played Duke, they played Texas Tech. And they had just, I believe, if I remember correctly, just gotten through finals, which everybody knows Gonzaga has always typically struggled the game after finals. But when you look at that Alabama game, Alabama may have played their best game of the year that night. They came into Seattle. They were the aggressor. But more importantly, they hit shots. I think they hit 13 threes that night, and they were coming from everybody. They were coming from Jaden Shackelford. They were coming from J.D. Davison, who kind of that was his breakout game nationally. He's, quite frankly, he hasn't reached that level of production in any game since. He's had a couple good games here or there, but it didn't boost him onto the national stage of being one of those can't miss freshmen that a lot of people were thinking that it might. He had a career game as a freshman that day. Javon Quinterly also played really well against Gonzaga. But I think you looked at a team that in Alabama that night that played extremely well. And they're a very talented basketball team. I think when you look at them, they're still ranked right now in the top 25 of AP in the USA Today. And then when you look at net, they're top 20, I think they're 22, 23. They've got a number of losses. I think they've got 8 losses on the season, but they don't care because they play such a difficult schedule, knowing that if you get a couple big wins, you're going to be fine for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee on that Sunday. But you're also going to prove and test your team throughout the course of the regular season. So hopefully at March, you've seen all different styles of play. You've seen all different types of talented players and knowing how to prepare for those. And I think that's one thing that Alabama, if you look at their season, has done a really good job. And I think you also have to look at that on the flip side and say, for all the Gonzaga critics and doubters at times, Gonzaga has done the same. They have played a very difficult schedule when they can find the right opponents. Yes, they've got a number of quad 4 games, quad 4 victories. You can't get away from that when you look at some of the games and opponents that they have in the WCC, the Pacifics, the Pepperdines, LMU this year, University of Portland, I believe, may have snuck into the quad 3 category. But then you also have Gonzaga in their non-conference. You have to have a number of quad 4 teams coming to your gym for home games, and that's one of the ways that the schedule has broke out over the last few years by doing that. But you balance it by having some tremendous quad 1 ranked type opportunity games in the non-conference, like the Alabama on the road, like Texas at home, like Texas Tech, like UCLA, like Duke. I mean, you just look at the names that I just listed. Very rarely are you seeing teams play that type of non-conference schedule. I read an article the other day. I wish I would have remembered or had a note taken down here about who wrote it, about just how good Gonzaga's non-conference schedule was. I think that non-conference prepared them for a lot of different things. Some tremendous individual players like Apollo Banchero had a game plan for that, size and length. With Duke's Mark Williams on the interior, you prepared for a Texas team that was experienced and tough and physical. You threw your freshmen into the fire against that. You played against a Texas Tech team who's now top 10-ish in the country, maybe the best defense or the top 3 defense in the country, based off of analytics. But you prepare for a Texas Tech team that is defensively, their identity is one way, and it is a very difficult prep. So if you happen to see them in the NCAA tournament, or you see a similar style defense, you've seen it, you've prepared for it, you've had success against it. You look at a UCLA team that's got a lot of talented players, and Jaquez Jr., Johnny Juzang, in the hype of a game of a Final Four rematch from a season ago. You've had to prepare for that. You've had to prepare for like the Alabama game that I just talked about, with the quickness and the speed that they want to play, and the fact that they play such a unique style, shooting literally all threes, and then paint touches to either get layups, or paint touches to get fouled and get to the free throw line, or paint touches to kick out for spray threes. I mean, you look at Gonzaga's schedule and how they've been able to prepare for all these different type of game plans. I think it's going to prepare them tremendously for the NCAA tournament.
Before we move on to the next topic, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with BetRivers yet, now's the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With basketball season tipping off, get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today, or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And then you touch on the improvement of the WCC. I've talked about it at length I think USF is a NCAA tournament team. Unfortunately for BYU, I thought they've been in most of the year. I think these last couple weeks have proven that they are truly right there on the bubble. If they've got a great, if they have a great, um, if they have a great showing in Vegas, and by that I mean getting to the conference tournament title, I think they've got a chance. But that's a difficult long road. But crazier things have happened. I think they're sitting at 48, 49, 50 right now in the net. Teams at that mark have made the NCAA tournament before. I think the difficult thing for them is they've got a couple difficult losses. They lost at Pacific. They lost to University of Portland. Those are losses that are really, I think, going to impact them in the eyes of the selection committee. And then getting to St. Mary's in the league and how they've really prepared Gonzaga. Randy Bennett knows Gonzaga as well as anybody. Randy Bennett, Mark Few have been matching X's and O's for 20 years now. And St. Mary's controls tempo. They are great in pick and rolls by manipulating angles. They've got an inside presence this year in toss that I don't think they had a season ago. They've got Logan Johnson as the slasher, who can make an outside shot and get hot on occasion. You've got a point guard in Tommy Kuzi that's as experienced as anybody in college basketball at that point guard position. He might not be as talented as other players that Gonzaga is going to go up against, but that doesn't always win you basketball games. It's poise. It's experience, it's understanding of a game plan and how to execute that game plan. And when you looked at how he ran things so efficiently in Moraga in that upset win, you see a lot of key attributes in Tommy Kuzi that leads you to believe that, hey, this St. Mary's team is really good. I actually think they could win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. I do think they will win a game. I think they could win two and be a second weekend team. And how great would that be for the WCC to have two teams in that second weekend? And then USF has continued to improve, which we've talked about at length at different times. But, I think, the important things with this week kind of being a primer week for the WCC tournament. The WCC is always given hasn't always, but in recent years has switched to a double bye for their top two teams. I think that's tremendous because it really protects a absolute upset of one of your top two seeds from a quad four. It also protects, if they win, but in a squeaker, would your net ranking or your Ken Palm analytics, which are all looked at very closely, would that impact it? It would also impact the eye test because that's another piece that the selection committee looks at. You want all of the best attributes and analytics to be going trending in a positive direction for your top two teams, because I think that's the goal every year. Get two teams in the NCAA tournament, and this year is a chance they get three, possibly four in that NCAA tournament. But I like the double bye format, and it's looking like, Gonzaga should be trending to play in the semifinals against either USF. I've got it here. Either against USF, BYU, LMU, or Pacific would be the grouping of teams that they play against. And then St. Mary's would be trending against the winner of the brackets going through Santa Clara, University of Portland, USD, and Pepperdine. I think when you look at it, if it shakes out to be GU versus USF in the semis and St. Mary's versus who I think will be Santa Clara in the semis, those are some really good basketball games. And that Santa Clara provides another quad one opportunity win because they're flirting right at that 70 mark right now. Well, actually, being on a neutral court, it wouldn't matter. Yeah, that would be a quad two win. If it was a road game, it would be quad one. So my mistake on that. But I think this is a big week because Gonzaga, and the way the WCC is always broken out, is they've been one of the first leagues to finish league play, and then they have a little gap, a little break before the conference tournament. And being that Gonzaga's got a double bye, that gives them an extra couple days where they're not necessarily working on scouting report for an individual opponent yet. You're working on individual skill development. You're able to have your coaching staff, quote, self-scout watch game films in particular the games that they've lost. Like, hey, in our losses, what do the teams do against us that make us struggle, or what do we struggle against that those teams do? And so I think those are things that they will try to work on in practice, clean up some things so that they are ready to go come semifinal night down in Vegas at the Orleans Arena. And then that's another unique thing about the WCC. After their conference tournament is over, which is one of the earliest in the country, it gives them another couple-day break to do the exact same thing. It gives them a chance to self-scout, gives them a chance to get individual skill development, clean up some things that they just typically want to do at this point of the year, add a few wrinkles on an offensive set, maybe look at something defensively, but also get healthy, because you've got 8 days between St. Mary's and when they'll play in the semifinals. 8 or 9 days, I'm not correct. And then they'll have another 8 or 9 days before they play that first game of the NCAA tournament. So I think it's always worked out really well for Gonzaga. The staff's always been tremendous about timing things out along those time frames. So it'll be fun, and it'll be interesting to track this next little stretch of Gonzaga. So for the Bulldog Broadcast and the Field of 68, I'm Dan Dickau, your host. When we come back next week, we should have a guest. We should be recapping the WCC tournament. I will give my picks next week for awards: Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, Coach of the Year, and Surprise of the Year in the WCC. So take care. God bless. Enjoy the conference tournament weeks that are starting.